I'm glad you're all here today. I think that this is an important topic for all of us. And I just want you to know, as I present the information, I really tried to include information that would be for faculty and staff. So as we go through things that you may see for a student in distress, it may not be specific to your area, and some things may be specific to your area. As I go through this, please feel free to stop me and ask questions. I'll do my best to answer those and provide you with resources and those sorts of things. So let me just see by a show of hands, how many of you have had to work with a student who is in distress in some form? Okay, so that's why you are all here today.
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
Could you define
apathy about things, a lack of energy. Student might talk about changes in sleeping or eating habits. Those kinds of things we tend to end up having reported through residence life and dining services. You know, our dining services staff do pay attention to our students. And so they will report, you know, if all of a sudden a student's eating habits have changed drastically, because they get familiar with the students coming through the line in the dining hall. You might see a dramatic change in their weight, either up or down, okay? There could be mood elevation, which could be signs of some sort of a manic episode happening. So, you know, the student's doing well and everything's going okay, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're just up and they're talkative and they're having a hard time sitting in their seat. You know, years ago, I remember sitting in a meeting with a man who had bipolar disorder, and you know, he was having a very difficult time in a manic phase, and in this meeting, he literally had to sit on his hands to keep himself from raising his hand every couple of minutes to interject in the meeting. So you might see that sort of elevation. You might see isolation or withdrawal. And again, you know, these are the kinds of things we tend to end up having reported through residence life. You know, the student has been out and about with other students in the residence hall, and all of a sudden, we're not seeing them, okay? Overtly suicidal thoughts. So a student who's actually referring to suicide as the current option in their life, okay? And that can take a lot of forms, okay? You know, they may be saying something like, you know, if I see you next week, you know, if I come back, maybe, you know, the best thing for me would be just to end it all. Okay, we have students who say those things. Giving away treasured personal possessions. So again, we tend to see that more in the terms of residence life. Increased irritability or aggressive behavior. Okay, so you might have a student in your class who, no matter what topic you bring up, they're irritable about it and they are argumentative about it. Bizarre thinking or paranoia, those are things that tend to be more signs of psychosis. So if all of a sudden, you know, this student is talking about people being out to get them, or they're saying things that just don't connect with what you're talking about, it's just sort of out there, those are definite warning signs of a student in distress. Excessive use of alcohol or other drugs. You may not see this, you may kind of see the after effects. I mean, obviously, you know, hopefully the student's not bringing alcohol or drugs into your classroom. But, you know, you may see that they're coming to class intoxicated, or they're nodding off in your class, or that sort of thing. You know, in residence life, we tend to hear more about that sort of thing. Students showing up for sanctions because they've been using drugs and alcohol in an excessive way. Okay, so those are the physical and psychological signs that we can see of a student in distress. Okay, and then just other factors to consider when you're looking at whether or not a student is in distress. So direct statements that are indicating family problems, personal losses such as death of a family member, or the breakup of a relationship. And, you know, a lot of times people think, oh, you know, if a student's having those kinds of issues, they're going to go talk to a counselor. But a lot of times they're talking to their faculty, or they're talking to their advisor. So they may come to you and say those kinds of things. You may be the first person that hears that, oh my gosh, my dad passed away this weekend, okay? And you may hear it in terms of a student wanting you to know that information just because they're sharing it, or I didn't get my assignment done because this happened, okay? Expressions of concern about a student by their peers. And this happens as well. We have students who show up at the health center saying, I'm concerned about this student. Or students who go to other faculty or other staff and say, I'm concerned and here's why. And then a written note or verbal statement that has a sense of hopelessness or finality. We have had situations where students have left notes for their faculty, okay? Just saying, or you sending them an email saying, you know, I'm really struggling, I just can't do this anymore. You know, those are pretty intense signs that something's going on with the student. And then trust your gut. okay? You work with these students day in and day out. So even if it's just this little tiny gnawing that something's not quite right, trust that, okay? Don't just dismiss it, but trust it. Because most of the time you're gonna be right in that, yes.
In general, for Shepherd, how serious a problem is suicide or suicide attempts among our students?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, it's been several years since we've had a successful suicide on our campus. But we do have students, several students every year, not necessarily the same students, but you know, there are probably about 4 or 5 every year who struggle seriously with this. And they end up with us in counseling services because we do have a protocol that we follow with students who are actively suicidal to protect their safety and make sure that they get the services that they need. So,
Is there also like a phenomenon of students who are suicidal who then commit or attempt suicide off campus? Like, is that something that's traced at all?
it's not anything that I have any statistics on as far as Shepherd's campus. You know, I would say that probably in most circumstances, if students are going to do something like that, a serious attempt, you're probably going to do it somewhere off campus. What we tend to hear the most is, I'm going to jump off the bridge. And that tends to be the thing that we hear. Now, the other thing that happens though, and I think this points to a lack of coping skills on the part of a lot of our students. They get overwhelmed, they get distressed, and the first thing that they utter is, well, I'm just going to kill myself. And really, they haven't thought about what exactly that means. And so then word gets back to us, and they come in, and they are on the protocol, and I was just spouting off. Well, you know, those aren't things that are really good to just spout off because you put wheels in motion that you can't stop very quickly. So, other questions? Did that answer your question about what a student in distress looks like?
Actually, I have a specific question about if the student is a loner, is that a student in distress?
Not necessarily.
And if how much prevention the faculty can exercise to get that the student not that being alone?
Okay. A student being a loner is not necessarily a sign of distress. Some students are just uncomfortable that way. We have an increasing number of students coming to college who are on the autism spectrum. And some of those students prefer to spend more time alone because it's very uncomfortable for them to socialize. If you have a student that you notice is sort of a loner, I mean, obviously there are things that you can ask. Do you belong to any organizations on campus? How are you doing making friends? Those kinds of things to just sort of get a sense of why that student might be a loner.
Actually, that leads to the next question. How much intervention is recommended or not recommended? Just leave that
on the part of the faculty?
On the part of faculty to bring the student to the clubs. I mean, we have variety of clubs in our department.
Okay.
Would that be too much if I put him in this or take him on a trip? Actually, we are going on a trip.
I mean, if you feel like you want to do that sort of a reach out for a student and say, we've got this opportunity going on, would you like to come along? There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing something like that. There are other avenues that you can try as well, and I'll talk about that. If you are concerned about the student just not connecting, because we do have a lot of resources on campus for that as well. One of the great tools that you have for something like that would be Beacon. You can put out a Beacon alert. The student just seems to be a loner. Does anybody know if they're connected in any way on campus? We don't want to send out mental health issues on Beacon though, okay? But there are some other things, and I'll get into that here in a second. Yes?
I'd like to add to that, Reza, if the choice of becoming alone is a changed behavior, someone that has been social and involved, and then all of a sudden they're isolating and being alone, that would be, to me, a classic example. But there are some students, believe it or not, do not want the crowd around them. you know, but if that's their,
It's true.
their, you know, manifestation, then that's fine. But it's the flip to someone, or their friends speaking out and saying, oh, we used to be so close, and, you know, we used to study together, now all of a sudden, he's not joining in. That's a classic
Right.
example.
And we know when we talk to our staff who work in student success, we tend to see this a lot with commuter students, but students who literally will come, sit in their car till it's time to go to class, they go to their class, they come back and they sit in their car till their next class, and they just don't really engage. Some of that is choice, some of that is, I'm apprehensive about what's available on campus and how to go about it. So it really depends on what the situation is with the student. But we do provide a number of outreach programs on our campus to try to get students involved. And so, in your instance, a phone call, for instance, to Julia Flacco, who manages student success, and saying, hey, do you know anything about this student? They just seem to be really isolated. Can kind of get some things going potentially.
Well, my personal opinion on that is the situation, I thought that may be a bit intrusive on a person who is already a loner. If I make a phone call, it's just rocking the boat that is not really necessary, but in my opinion. I don't know, I'm not an expert in this position, but what I see is a lot of potential in this kid. And unfortunately, the area that he's in requires a lot of collaboration
Right.
with his student, his fellow students.
Right. And just because you make a phone call doesn't mean you're asking for an intervention.
I
You
see.
could just be asking for information. Do you know anything about this student and their engagement on campus?
Yeah.
But what you're describing, a conversation with the student saying, hey, this is the major you're in, this is the route you're going in career-wise. It requires a lot of collaboration. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the amount of collaboration that's required? What can I do to help you with that?
Yeah, actually, that's fine, but I wasn't sure how far I can push this issue.
Ultimately.
Once or twice,
Yeah.
actually, that's enough.
Right. You don't want to constantly be at the student, and unless you have the kind of relationship with the student that you can do that, and it's not going to damage your relationship. So, other questions? Okay. So, how do we help a student who is in distress? Well, there are a lot of things that we can do on all different levels. If you want to talk to a student, you want to do that in a private setting, okay? You don't want to be having this conversation while the rest of your students are filing out of the classroom, or other students are standing around, that sort of thing. You want to be able to be in a comfortable place to give your students the undivided attention that they need. And if they're sharing things with you, asking them, have you ever talked to anybody else about the situation? Have you talked to other teachers? Have you talked to a counselor? Or is this the first time that you're sharing this? You want to express what your concern is, and you want to do that using statements like, I'm concerned that, whatever it may be, that you're not turning your assignments in on time, or that you're not coming to class, or you're falling asleep in my class, or whatever it may be, okay? Ask open-ended questions, because that's going to give the person an opportunity to talk. If you start asking yes, no, closed questions, that's all you're going to get. It's just those very closed answers, okay? You don't have to feel compelled to find a solution, all right? Sometimes just listening is all that student needs in that moment. And you can suggest that the student can get more help if they need it. And you can point out resources that are available, such as counseling services, okay? And then don't hesitate to ask for support from us. Okay, we are available, we're there Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. I'm going to talk to you about accessing us here in a second. If you need to make a referral, okay? If you think the situation is urgent and that student needs to be evaluated pretty quickly, you're going to call the health center, okay? You're going to get Tess on the phone, or Becky or Kathy or whoever happens to answer the phone. You're gonna let them know what's going on, and they will access one of the counselors. It's not an unusual thing for one of them to come and knock on our door, even if we're in the middle of another session, and say, hey, we have this emergency situation going on, okay? You can suggest the student make an appointment with counseling services. Again, that's done through the health center. All they have to do is call or stop in, say, hey, I'd like to see a counselor. That gets set up. You know, our average time to get somebody in now typically is within a week, is that right? Okay. And if necessary, help the student make an appointment. The student might be saying, I just don't know. And it's not unusual for staff or faculty member to call the health center and, hey, I'm a so-and-so. They'd really like to make an appointment, and then hand the phone over. Okay. If you don't think that that student can wait for an appointment, just walk on down with them to the health center. That is not unusual either. We have a couple times every semester that a faculty member or a staff member walks in with a student, and one of the people from the health center comes down and knocks on one of our doors, and we come up and we take care of the situation. Yes?
The students in very obvious distress get help from the health center, but is there a threshold where you really need to take the student to the health center, or where they're just talking to you isn't enough?
I would say, you know, if just talking to you isn't enough, that's more of a situation where we want to help them make an appointment and, you know, get scheduled in. You know, if it's a little more urgent, like, oh, I don't know if the student can wait for a week, they'll talk to us and we'll say, okay, we can readjust our schedules here and there. We can get this student in sooner. It's not unusual for us to say, okay, bring them in during lunchtime or whatever, and we'll do that. But if you feel like that student is not safe, okay, if they're in very obvious distress, you know, they're filled with anxiety, they're talking about feeling hopeless, being in despair, they're crying, you know, whatever it is, that's more the type of situation where you want to lock the student down.
If they're not in distress, but they come to talk to you, are we still supposed to report it? I mean, I've had students who come and talk to me about things that are, you know, unpleasant going on in their lives, but they're talking to me, they're not.
Yeah, not necessarily. You know, if the student's feeling like talking to you is enough, now you all know that as faculty and staff, you're mandated reporters for any sort of interpersonal violence. So if the student reports interpersonal violence to you, you are mandated to report that.
What about mental?
Who do we report to?
Interpersonal violence, you would report that to Annie Lewin, who's our Title IX coordinator. If they're talking about emotional abuse or that sort of thing, you're not mandated to report those kinds of things, okay? But some, yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Just last week when I was in the dining hall, a student sank to the ground, began to sob, shouted things out. And I was right there. So I tried to talk to her, but she wasn't responsive to me. Now, fortunately, there were some people who knew her who came up and talked to her, I think, to her room. I think one was an RA or something like that. But I wondered both what I would have done if they weren't there to help, or what I would do if that happened in a classroom. So that maybe the kind of thing we're talking about. So is the best alternative the last one there that you can actually,
Right,
if you can get the student to get up and walk with you?
Exactly.
Which was not apparent
right.
to me when I was in this situation.
Yeah, if you can get the student to get up and walk with you, bring them over to us. If that's not happening and you want to call over and say, hey, can you send a counselor here? We'll do that too, okay?
I realize it's pretty rare, but it's
Right.
something to think about.
Exactly. Okay. So other resources that are available to you, obviously counseling services. You can call a member of the counseling services team at any point in time to get some guidance. So if you're just unsure of what to do in a situation and you want a little bit of guidance, give one of us a call, and we'll kind of talk you through what some of your best options may be. Okay?
Your extension is?
I'm getting to that. Our behavioral intervention team, this is a team that meets every week. How many of you knew that we had a BIT on campus? Okay, So our behavioral intervention team, every Monday morning we get together and we have the dean of students, the assistant dean of students. We have health center, we have counseling services, we have residence life, we have SUPD. Okay, and our job is to assess the needs of students in crisis. That's what we do every Monday morning. So if you have a student that you are concerned about, and it's one of these things like, I'm just not sure what to do, I think, maybe it would be good if somebody reached out to this student. You can call counseling services, you can call the dean of students and say, I have this student who I'm concerned about. Can you bring that student up in your next BIT meeting? Okay, and we'll get together and we'll talk about what we might be able to do to address the needs of that student. So for instance, if it's a residential student, the RAs may check in on them more frequently in the residence hall. One of the counselors may reach out and say, hey, we understand that you're struggling a little bit right now. Do you feel like coming in and maybe talking with one of us? If it's a physical health thing, which often can cause distress as well, Becky will give a call to the student. So there are a lot of things that we can do from the BIT perspective. Okay, but we're there every Monday morning talking about these things. In crisis situations, so when somebody is talking about suicide, they're making suicidal statements, you've heard about a suicide attempt, that is a crisis situation, okay? Written or verbal violence or acting out violently, if you see or hear about that, that's a crisis. Destruction of property or other criminal acts, okay, crisis. Inability to communicate, so they're having garbled or slurred speech or disjointed thoughts. That's a crisis. Loss of contact with reality, crisis. Highly disruptive behavior in your classroom is a sign of crisis. Okay?
We might add one more there.
Sure.
I wonder if, anybody has experienced a kind of fixation on the teacher. They're with us so much. We have a lot of really amazingly extended time with them, talking about all sorts of things in literature class. And I did have an episode where one student just got fixated on me. And happily I called y'all. And so I had to really go back up and I knew how to act because of that. But that might be good to add to crisis situations.
Okay. And then how to respond to a crisis. If you believe that there is imminent danger for that student, you want to call SUPD. 5202 is the number that one of their officers carries 24/7. They always have an officer connected to that line, okay? And one of the officers will show up wherever you are to sort of be the first responder in that situation. If they need to call us, they will. If they need to call 911 and bring in an ambulance, they'll do that, okay? If you're just not sure what to do, if you need help assessing the situation, call the health center and ask to speak with one of us immediately. And we'll help you assess that situation.
And what's your number for the health center?
5161. Okay. As far as our counseling services, our services are free to all Shepherd students. It is not time limited, so we don't restrict students to a certain number of sessions. We have students that come in a couple times, we never see them again. Students that we see off and on throughout their years at Shepherd. And students that we see regularly from the time they walk into the school to the time they walk out of the school. Okay, so there's no restriction on it. The service is confidential, and this is one of the things I really need you to understand. If you call us and you express that you have a student that you're concerned about, and the student comes to see us for counseling, we then are bound by this confidentiality. We cannot report back to you. The most you're going to get from us is the student's okay, we're taking care of the situation. Okay, but beyond that, we can't share anything.
Is that a two-way street? Does the student know that the faculty member is the source of it?
We will ask. If a faculty member or anybody calls us and asks us to do a reach out, we will say, do you mind if we share that you brought this information to our attention? If you say no, then we kind of finagle our way to contact the student and say, hey, I just kind of heard you're having a rough time. But we will not share your name unless you give us permission to do that. Okay? Counselors are available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, but there's one of us on call 24 hours a day, 365. And if you check out our website, there are multiple resources available to students on there. There are things like the suicide prevention hotline. There's a crisis text line where they have professionals available to text with people 24 hours a day, which tends to be one of the preferred methods that our students use now. But if you take a look at our website, you'll see what those resources are. If a student needs an appointment, they call the health center, 5161, and then we have our 3 full-time counselors. Between the 3 of us, we've done this work for over 70 years. We're not new at this. We're still all very young. We've done this work for a long time. So, don't hesitate to contact any one of us, okay? Any questions that I can answer at this point?
I'm glad you mentioned the follow-up because for 2 semesters now, we've kind of gone through a student in crisis, doing really poorly, a loner, was referred to you people, withdrew a semester, came back, is repeating the same behaviors, and is just academically having a real hard time. But it's good to know to contact you so you can follow up because I don't know what else to do.
Right. And in a situation like that, that is a great student to bring up for the BIT team. So, other questions?
I don't have a phone in my lab, actually, so I wouldn't know how to use those 4-digit numbers in an emergency situation.
Do you have a cell phone, Stephen?
I do have a cell
All
phone.
right, 304-876-5161.
Is it always 3 or 4, 8, 7?
Yes.
Just call.
Secondly, do you have like a stop, drop, and roll card or something that we put in our wall or in our briefcase or something with the numbers on it?
I can certainly get something like that out to all the faculty. So I would be happy to do that.
That's a great idea.
Could we post this on the CTL site? Would you mind?
Other questions? Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment, working with first-year students, a lot of them wouldn't realize how difficult of a time they're having. They're not always verbal about it, or it doesn't come to light, but sometimes they'll share in a paper or in an evaluation down the road. And any opportunity that you have, I think, to introduce students to our counselors and the services that are available to them can help them, and you might not realize how much it's helping. So just even if you have like 15 minutes to carve out of time in your class to talk about counseling services and where it's located, or to bring a counselor to talk to your class, they're great. They come into a lot of FIEX classes and talk to students, or even to show them pieces of the counseling website and look at all these resources on this website. If you have time or the inclination, you can use these at your own convenience. So any way that you can, create an assignment or an activity to get them aware of those resources and actually hands-on using them, because it's the same as if we say, we have free tutoring available, unless you actually encourage them to go see where that is and how to sign up for it, they don't always do it. Same with counseling. If you can tell them, this is where it's located, this is how you sign up, it's free, just reiterating those things, it really can help.
Is that part of the sort of freshman orientation before they come to campus? Okay.
Yeah, they get all that information on there.
And in FIEX classes, it's a wellness component that we discuss as well.
Other questions? Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.